Okay, this is the forecast for season of Cancer. Runs from June 22nd to July 23rd. Now, this is it's a little bit of a tricky time, okay? Because you're going to feel like a lot of things need to happen, right? And there are actually probably some major decisions that you need to make. But you're going to have to wait till everything starts to come together. So you've got some larger decisions to make in terms of direction that you want to go, especially if you're starting a new project, starting school, starting any type of new venture. So this month you'll find, or the next 30 days, you'll find that decisions are really important. But you actually are going to have to decide how you're going to decide decisions. And one of the things that you're going to find is you'll have a lot of different ideas. Let it percolate for a little bit. So don't do anything for the first, let's say, 2 or 3 days. Okay, and then you'll settle down because there's all these ideas, and what you want to do is start to see some types of patterns or see ways you can make inroads so that you don't have to do a lot of work. Okay, and especially if you find that things are chaotic and you're trying to organize things, actually, what you may want to do instead of trying to organize everything and trying to put out little fires, take an overall approach and try to understand the process or understand some of the fundamentals of what you're doing. That's going to be really important. Now, you may find that you don't have all of those fundamentals in place that you need. That still shouldn't stop you from planning. So if you don't have what you need or things aren't set up yet, that's the perfect time for planning. Now, what you do have to do, what is important, is that you have a bit of patience. So you're going to have to wait, and that's a little bit of a tricky situation because if your house is on fire, your first action or your first thought is, I need to put out this fire. So you'll put out all these small fires, and then the larger fire starts erupting. So you almost are going to have to be like a firefighter and analyze the fire. And that's a little bit tricky sometimes because if there's a fire, there's an immediacy. So I would say that the big issue now is going to be patience. Okay. Um, and probably what you'll find is in about a month or two, things are actually starting to formulate. Now, you may not be able to wait for the month, but I would say if you could just slow things down a little bit. And look, if things are critical, yeah, you do have to do those. But if you have a bit of a cooler head and you're a bit more strategic instead of tactical, you'll find that that'll work really well for you this upcoming over the next 30 days or so. And look, it's going to be tricky because, like I said, there's a lot of things in play, and there is going to be this feeling of I need to do something, but choose the right choose the right path, choose the right moment to act. And it's going to be doubly difficult because internally you're going to feel like I need to be on top of it. Energetically, you're going to feel like I want to do things or I don't want to look like I'm not doing anything. Okay. And you may even find that people around you, especially if they're kind of close relationships with partners, business partners, anyone that you're working with, they're also going to have that feeling of let's move. So you're going to feel pressure both internally and from your partner and the situation to act really to be a bit proactive. One of the things I would say over the next 30 days that, and this is a general theme, is one of the things over the next 30 days is knowing when not to do anything, right? So you don't want to be in a situation where something needs to happen, so you're just doing anything because that's not really going to work for you, and it's actually going to create more work down the track. And there's a saying that I really like, and I heard it in the workplace. There's never time to do it right, but there's always time to do it over. You don't you don't really want to do that over the next 30 months. Sorry, next 30 days. And to add a little bit more of a complexity to that situation, in addition to feeling that you want to move things, there will be lots of minor things that show up, and some things that aren't so minor that you'll be waiting for some finances or resources or people aren't really showing up. And you have to factor that in. Okay. What I would say with your plans, the plans have to be rather loose and flexible. So the plans aren't set in stone, they're more of a guideline. So what I would say is when you're setting up a plan or a plan of action, is have time frames and have contingency plans or backup plans so that while you're under a lot of pressure, you're doing the thinking before you're in that pressure situation. And look, that's just generally good advice. If you can plan things out before you start, and that way, when things are hectic, you're not running around just trying to put out fires. There's really a plan, and it's a tricky thing because if you're not used to planning, the natural inclination is to drop the plan when things get a bit hectic, and that's actually the worst thing to do. So if you can keep a bit of a cool head, you'll find that things actually work really well. I would also say that there's a lot of undercurrents or a lot of things happening below the surface that you can't see. And again, this is probably a good idea to be a bit more patient. So if you have a limited amount of resources and you attack the problem, and then some new problem shows up, then you don't have any resources and you're exhausted and you've already um, you've acted too early, right? And that is going to be the general theme this month is you're going to feel that your 60% of stuff isn't working. So if that's the case, you really just have to focus on that 40%. I'm not saying that you ignore the things that aren't working, but that can't be your focus because there'll always be these little things that are popping up that are, I don't want to say the distractions, but they keep you from your major objective. That's what I would say. You have to have your major objective and notice things that are minor objectives. Now, just because something pops up and it's immediate doesn't mean it's a major issue. And again, this is where the planning comes in. So you have to think about what are the key drivers of what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish? What do you need? What can you wait for? And how time sensitive are things? And unfortunately, we live in a time, or the current time, is everything is immediate. So if you're waiting for like more than a minute, it's like, oh, this is just taking forever. No, it's not. It's not taking forever. There's a thing called universal time, and most people don't really run on it. So you have an idea of what you want to do, and you want it to happen smoothly and quickly. And then there's universal time. And one of the things I have noticed is, especially if you're using astrology, is that's actually universal time, right? So you'll notice that even the delays will kind of fall into place. Um, and if you can do that, you'll find that this month goes a lot more smoothly. Okay. And what I would say is when you're planning, um, you have, especially if it's something long range, you have to think about it that you're laying a foundation. And this is a foundation that you're actually going to build on, and is something that I would say is going to have long lasting effects. So it's something that has effects over years, maybe even decades, or a good portion of your life, or it changes the fundamental nature of your life. And when that's the case, you have to take a more long term view about what you're doing. Look, there's a saying: if your plants aren't growing, you can't hurry them by pulling pulling on the tops of the leaves. All you're doing is uprooting whatever little foundation that you have. Okay, and again, I will say this: it is going to be a very charged period. You're going to have a lot of ideas. You're going to feel like moving, but if the environment isn't ready, everything becomes premature, and you're being hasty. Okay. At the same time, I would say this is a really good time for planning, visualizing, dreaming. Think of some of the ideals that you want to live by. And it's not necessarily that you have to put those in place. Just kind of let them ruminate a little bit. And I would say it's always a good idea to keep a journal. So start jotting down some of your ideas, because what you will find is that an idea will hit you. And if you don't write it down, it's gone. Um, it's also a fairly good idea is to keep a little notebook, because it doesn't happen that your ideas come to you when you're sitting down, you have some quiet time. It can be when you're on the way to doing something else. So you don't want to lose those particular gems. And that's also this thing of universal time. The idea isn't going to come always when you need it, but and some of the time you'll have to create space. And everybody's a little bit different. For some people, their ideas come when they're in the middle of chaos, and other people they need quiet space. So again, I think it's a really good time is to take a little bit of self inventory and work out how you work and how things work for you and how you're geared to do things. And I'm not saying that you always do things the way you have done them, because if you've got weaknesses, you're not combating them. You're not shoring those up. So you want to take an inventory and look at the things that kind of either slow you down or get in your way for you, not external things, because the external things you can't really control. You just can change how you react to them and change your reaction and just wait. But the internal things, those you can work on. And I would say that is really the focus. And it's interesting because Cancer is the sign of the home, it's the sign of mothers, it's the foundation, it's the source. And it has a relationship to the fourth house, which is the beginning and ending of all things. So since you're in the beginning phase or the planning phase, it's probably a good idea to look at, say, what are your resources and put those together in a way that's going to work for you. Okay. You may find that some of your plans or some of the things you want to do might take you into July, uh, maybe even towards the end of July. That's fine. You're better off doing something that takes you a little bit longer, that's long lasting, than doing something hasty and it's going like that. You don't want to be a flash in the pan. And that's something that you really have to be cautious about. The other thing I would say is if you have any partnership for the next 3 to 4 months, it'll be quite easy, and you're feeling your way out. You're kind of setting up some type of boundaries and guidelines or how you want things to work. After the fourth or fifth month period, then people's personalities will come out, and you may feel these kind of power dynamics or these tensions or these different objectives. So what I would say, especially if you're starting a partnership, don't just talk about the idea and how great it's going to be and how it's going to change your life. Really sit down and say and think about and talk about what do you do when things don't work. Have some time frames in terms of metrics, in terms of how things need to be at certain points of time. And if they're not that way, what do you have to do, or what are your responsibilities, and what are your partner's responsibilities? And that doesn't have to be etched in stone, because everything is fairly fluid and dynamic. But if you kind of have a bit more of this planning in terms of contingencies about what happens or what needs to happen when things aren't working, you're going to find that not only this month, but the next 4 to 5 months runs a lot more smoothly. And again, this is something that I think isn't just um, indicated by this upcoming 30 days or this Cancerian season, but I think it's just a good practice to get into. Okay. All right. Um, at the same time that you'll be wanting to move and things will feel slow, is you may find that there's a lot more activity around you where people want to socialize. People will be doing a lot of short visits, not so many long ones, but maybe some short ones. But if it is a long one, if it's a long distance visit, the person will be around for a while, and it will require a lot more involvement on your part. And again, you're going to have to plan for that. So what I would say is keep the entertaining light, with short time frames. And you can do more than with short time frames. That's going to work better for you than kind of losing large chunks of time, because you're going to need it in terms of being proactive, and some of the time you will actually be reactive, because this is a pretty charged month. Okay. Let me see what else we have here. Right. What I've noticed is both this month and last month is the internal feeling that people have and the external feelings aren't really kind of matching. Um, so the idea of planning and then the idea of feeling really active, They kind of sound like they go together if you're focused. If you're being a bit impatient and, oh, I want to get started, well, that's going to really get in the way of your foundation. And again, I would say this is really over the next 30 days, create your foundation, but also create downtime. That's another thing I would say is important. In your plan, create some downtime. So it's not always go, 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 because for two reasons. One, it's gonna tire you out, possibly burn you out. And two, any type of venture that you're doing, some of the best ideas come when you're not actually doing the thing. Or probably the best example of that is people that have small businesses. They're so busy they actually don't have time to think about the business or make the improvements that they know they need to make. And again, this is what I'm talking about what's your objective. So again, don't focus on the small things that are just right immediate. Unless they're mission critical, put them on the back burner. Okay, so this is the time of learning kind of patience. Of you're growing your seed, you're growing your foundation. And I think if you take a more long term approach and be less concerned about the immediate results that you're getting, that the next 30 days will work really well for you, and you'll really set yourself up so that your how would you say that your plan has steady progress. That's what you want. You want steady progress. You don't want things to be quick, because if you're building something and it comes together quickly, it also can disappear very quickly. Okay. Thank you very much, and good luck this upcoming 30 days.